Good morning, everyone. My name is Tricia Baer. I'm an OSUIT graduate from OSUIT in Okmulgee, and I graduated from college in April of 2022. I'm also a military retired veteran, and I served 4 years in the Marine Corps and 17 years in the Army National Guard on active duty. So I've been retired since 2014. So what I want to do today is I want to teach everyone how to make homemade pie dough as well as coconut pie. So I've measured out 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour for the dough, and I'm using my KitchenAid mixer. If you ever get a chance to buy one, I really love my mixer because it has an attachment on the front. So if you ever need to shred cheese or vegetables or cut up vegetables in certain size slices, this is a really handy KitchenAid mixer to have. And it has like 4 or 5 different attachments for vegetables. So I really use it just for the cheese, the shredded cheese, which takes less than 2 minutes to shred a whole block. Okay, so we have our all-purpose flour, and I have this little device hooked to my bowl so it's easier to get the flour in the bowl. And I already sifted the flour, so if you're ever going to use flour or cocoa, it's a good idea to go ahead and sift it because it gets a lot of lumps in it. You want to make sure you get all the flour in there. There you go. Alrighty. A little bit left here. Alright. Okay. So once we get all of our all-purpose flour in, the next thing we're going to add is sugar. So you need 1 tablespoon of sugar. And the sugar is not really to make it sweet. Its function for the pie dough is to help interrupt the protein development. So that's why we use the sugar. And we have 1 tablespoon of sugar. And what I'm doing is I'm mixing the dry ingredients first, and then I'll mix the wet ingredients second. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And the salt, reason I use add salt and I use unsalted butter, because different kinds of butter have different amounts of salt in it, and I want to be able to control how much salt goes into my recipes. So when I bake, I always use unsalted butter, and you want to make sure that your butter is cool, not cold. So take it out of the fridge maybe 15 to 20 minutes before you're ready to use your butter. Okay, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to mix the flour, the salt, and the sugar a little bit on low, just to get it mixed. And I have a paddle attachment on my KitchenAid mixer for this. I'll let that mix a couple of minutes. And then what I use for my butter is I have this little cutting device, and I just set the stick of butter on it and cut it this way, and then I turn it around and cut it that way. That way the pieces are little enough, like the size of a small dice, and they're little enough so when they are mixed with the flour, it's a lot easier to mix it and you're not overworking your flour. Alright, so we mixed the flour, the salt, and the sugar up, and then now we're actually going to add 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And what the vegetable oil does is when we get to the point to add our liquid, it doesn't make the dough as stretchy like pizza dough, because we don't want it stretchy. We want it to stay together so the pie dough stays intact while it's being cooked in the oven. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to turn the oven on 400 degrees. So once we get the pie dough mixed up, then we'll be ready to put it in the oven. Okay, so I got it on 400 degrees and we're going to cook it for 20 minutes at first. And what we're going to do is we're going to blind bake the pie dough. And basically what that means is we're going to bake the pie dough first because the filling is actually cooked on the stove. And then once the pie dough is done and it's cooled, as well as the filling, then we're going to put it inside of the pie dough. You want to make sure both of those are cool because if not, the butter and the pie dough will separate. So you got to give it time to cool before you actually put the pie filling into the pie dough. Okay, so we're working on the pie dough first. So my next step would be the oil. So I'm going to pour the oil in. And I'm just going to mix that up just for a minute or so, just to get the flour coated. So when we put the wet ingredients, it doesn't make the dough stretchy. And I use vegetable oil. You don't want to really use olive oil because that doesn't really work very well for the dough, for this type of pie dough. This is the savory pie dough, so you can actually use it as a pot pie, or you can make a fruit pie out of it, but we're going to make coconut pie today. Alright, so we got the oil mixed in with the flour that was sifted. Alright, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our cool butter, not cold butter, cool butter, because it will actually mix up better with the flour. So, and if you don't have a mixer, by the way, you can use this pastry blender, and once you put the butter and the flour, you can mix it in yourself by hand, but it's just easier if you have a KitchenAid mixer. Okay, so we're going to mix in our cool butter, and actually we used 1 cup of butter, unsalted butter, and that's equivalent to 2 sticks of butter. We're going to turn it on, and then we'll close real fast. Alright, so we're going to put our butter in, and you want to mix it up to where it's like less than the size of a pea size. And I just put it in this little sliding tray here, and it goes in there. We're going to let it mix up just for a minute. Until it becomes like a shaggy dough. You want to make sure that the butter is not, in big clumps in there when you get ready to mix the dough. Once the cool butter is mixed in the pan, or the bowl I should say, then we're going to add 1/4 cup of cool water, not cold water, so take it out of the fridge about 15 minutes before you need it. And then we have lemon juice here, and we have 2 teaspoons of lemon juice that we're going to put into the flour. And we just add that in there because it adds acidity to our dough. You can use vinegar, just regular vinegar, if you don't have lemon juice for the acidity. And what the lemon juice does is it allows the protein to be more relaxed and more elastic. So that's why we add the acidity, which is the lemon juice, and it's just 2 teaspoons. But like I said, you can use regular vinegar, not balsamic vinegar, of course, but any regular vinegar would work. Okay, so we're going to turn it off for a second, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Let's use this. See, it's still roughly mixed. And then we're going to put in our water, 1/4 cup of water, and then 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. I like to kind of spread it around instead of just dumping it in the same place. That helps it mix better. Alright, so we're going to mix in our lemon juice and our water. Stick this you don't want to over mix it because you don't want your dough to be tough. You want it to be soft and flaky. And see how it's sticking to the paddle attachment? Baking mat out, and I like this baking mat because it has rings on it, so I actually use the rings to cut the parchment paper that we're going to use. So when we blind bake the pie shell, we're going to put the parchment paper on top of the dough, and then we're also going to put in beans that can be reused every time to kind of weight down the dough so it doesn't rise up, since we're cooking the filling on the stove and we need something to kind of weight it down. And so we'll put it in the oven for 20 minutes with the weights on, and then we'll remove the parchment paper and the beans. Okay. That was just letting me know that the oven is at 400 degrees. Now I would recommend getting an oven thermometer because each oven is different. So if the recipe says 20 minutes or 30 minutes, go by your own oven, because I know my oven cooks way faster than most recipes. So, alright. Okay, so we just need a little bit of flour. And I use all-purpose flour. And this really is one of the easiest pies to make. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit of flour to my baking mat, and I'll kind of put it from high up because I don't want agave flour, just enough to keep the dough from sticking to the rolling pin. And then here's my rolling pin, which says, let's let the good times roll. And that's what this is. It's fun cooking. Once you get all your ingredients and your equipment mixed in place, then all you have to do is mix things according to the recipe. Here's my bowl scraper. I do have this long bench scraper that I will use to actually pick the dough up and put it in the glass pie dish. Alright, so I'm just going to get some flour on my rolling pin. So that way this dough doesn't stick to the rolling pin. I'm going to use my bench scraper to scrape it out of the bowl. Just like so. Now if you were going to make a fruit pie, you can mix up some egg wash, egg and water, or egg and butter. Egg and water or egg and milk. But we're only going to use the bottom shell because we're making coconut cream pie. And once we make the coconut cream pie and it cools, as well as the dough, the pie dough shell, then we're going to put Cool Whip on top, and I'll show you how to make that later. Cool Whip on top with coconut that's been toasted. Okay, so I'm just basically kind of making it into a oval wall, like so. And that's why I take it out a little bit earlier, because I know I'm still going to be handling it, and you don't want to handle your dough too much. About half. Alright, and then I'm just going to shape it into 2 round circles, because this is actually going to make 2 pies. So if you don't have a top crust on your pie, like for a pot pie or a fruit pie, then you can make 2 coconut pies out of this recipe. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap it in saran wrap. So we use saran wrap. And we're going to actually put it in the fridge to chill. You want to put it in the fridge to chill for 2 hours before you take it out. And then once you take it out and you roll the dough, you want to put it back in the fridge about 15 to 20 minutes before you put it in the oven. Alright, so we've got our 2 doughs here. I'm going to put them in the fridge and bring out the other 2 that are already made. I made these 2 doughs yesterday because I knew I needed 2 hours to chill it. So I'm going to take it out of the saran wrap and let it chill at room temperature for about 15 to 20 minutes. You don't want to wait too much longer than that, because if you wait too long, it's going to be hard to roll out. And when you go to put it in the dish or when you go to cook it, it's going to fall down on the sides. So at least allow it 15 minutes. I'm going to set our little timer here for 15 minutes. And then we'll be ready to roll the pie dough. Get some more flour. And I've already cut out the 2 parchment papers, the circles, and I used my mat actually to measure it out. And then I've got the beans here that I'm going to actually put, once we get the dough rolled out and seated into the pie dish, then we're going to put beans on top of the parchment paper in order to keep it from puffing up or the sides from falling down. Because again, we're blind baking the pie shell. Okay, so our pie dough has rested for 15 minutes out of the fridge, and I put a towel, and you can use the towel or a slip mat under your mat so that when you're rolling, the baking mat doesn't slide around. I put flour on my rolling pin, flour on my baking mat, so that way the dough doesn't stick as easy. And basically you're doing short little strokes and turning it. And it's a little bit hard to roll because it's cold, but you don't want it too soft or it'll fall apart. It takes a minute to get it rolled out. You're just turning it. And you're doing small, short strokes on rolling it. You're not rolling it off the side of the dough. And because it has butter in it, the warmer it gets, the more it's going to melt and fall apart. So you want to keep it in shape so it'll still take the shape of the pie that you're going to do. Just roll it. Some flour. Like so, and you can be pressing down as you're rolling. Press down as you're rolling. Alright, and then we're going to turn it. Put some more flour on the rolling pan. It's a little bit hard at first, but the more you do it, it'll get softer, see? Now, if you get any cracks in it, you can wet your finger and put it back together. So if you see any cracks, just do that. like so, and then don't forget to turn it. Make sure there's flour under it, and then turn it. Okay, you see how we have this big crack right here? Turn it like that, okay? Again, you want to only keep it out of the fridge about 15 minutes. Because longer than that, it's going to start falling apart on you. It's not going to keep its shape when you put it in the oven. And you keep getting a crack right here. So I'm going to grab some water so that we can seal that up. Alright, so we got some water and we're going to seal the crack up. Seal the water and just kind of push it together. That way it keeps a good shape to it. Okay. Over here. Get that. Yeah, put a lot of flour on the roller, it helps it a lot better. Make sure you turn it, because you're trying to maintain a circle. That's what you're trying to maintain. Still getting a little bit of a crack right here, so I'm going to wet it. Wet it, and I'm going to try to push it together. Okay. And you can also turn it over. That helps you better to get it to smooth out. And you want to get it to about 1/4 inch thick. So I use my baking mat with the circles on it, and that'll tell me if it's 8.5 inch, 9.5 inch, or 10.5 inch. And I try to get it over 9.5 just because I want it to go up the sides, so we can do the little crimping edges. Now, if you were to make a fruit pie, you could make both of these pieces of dough into a lattice, and we'll do that at another time. So today we're just making the bottom dough. And you want to make it even so that it cooks evenly. See how that spread it out? Just like so. And I've got it past that 9-inch mark. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use our bench scraper, put a little flour on it, and then we're going to seed it into our pie dish. Now, you don't have to. I do like to spray my pie dish because I don't want it to burn. Even though it has butter in it, butter burns. So it burns really quick. That's why we make clarified butter, so that the milk solids are separated from the butter, so it doesn't burn as easily. So, let me find the sprayer. Here it is. Here's the sprayer. We're going to spray our pan, pie pan, just a little bit. And please make sure you get the sides of it. And then we'll do this one as well. So you want to get the bottom, and as well you want to get the sides. Alright. Let's see if we can get this off. And I put flour on top of my bench scraper, so I'm just gently going underneath it, like so, to keep it intact. Alright, now it's moving around, so it's ready to lift. So I'm just going to lift it up and put it right there and center it on that pie dish. Just like so. Alright. I didn't want it too thin. I probably could have gone a little bit more on the side, but I didn't want it to be too thin. So if it's not quite to the edge, you can just pat it down a little in order to make it go to the edge better. Because you need a certain amount on the edge in order to crimp the edges of it. So get a little more on this side. Alright. Now we're just going to go around and crimp it, and we're going to crimp it by putting our pointer finger in between our pointer finger and our thumb on our other hand. So we can go like this. The next one I do, I'm actually going to roll it bigger, just so I have a better crimped edges on it. Alright, how's that? Okay, so I have the pie shell, or pie dough. Now I'm seating the parchment paper down on the inside. And I'm making it a little bigger than just the bottom part because I don't want it to fall in. I don't want the dough to fall inward. And that's why we use the cool butter instead of the cold butter. Alright. Okay, so now we're going to place the beans on the parchment paper, and that's serving as a weight. You can buy pie weights online. So we're just going to put the beans, and you can reuse the beans. Just put them in a container for the next time you do a pie, a blind baked pie. I'm putting enough beans in there so that it keeps the dough on the sides of the dish. Alright. Now we're going to do one more. I sprayed the pie dish here, and I'm going to roll out the dough for that one. So, for a second. Now I'm going to try to roll this one out to probably 10.5 inches to get it more up on the side of the pie plate. And again, we took it out of the fridge. We took it out of the fridge and let it sit about 15 minutes, but it had been in the fridge at least 2 hours. You don't want to let it get too soft because then it'll be hard to keep the shape when you have it in the oven. So we have the oven heated to 400 degrees. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the pie shells in there for 20 minutes. And then we're going to take the pie shells out, remove the parchment paper, and remove the beans, which are acting as the weight. And then we're going to cook it for another 10 minutes until it's golden brown. And like I said earlier, check your stove because every stove is different. So yours may take longer than 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes. It's starting to move on me, so I'm going to turn it over when it does that. And start on the other side. This is pie dough for a coconut cream pie, but you can also use it for a chicken pot pie. You can use it as for a fruit pie. Now I'm using a glass pie dish just because it cooks more evenly. The heat seems to distribute more evenly. So that's why I'm using a pie plate. Now if you're going to make brownies or cake or something like that, then a metal pan is just fine. But if you're trying to make a pie, a glass dish actually works the best. If you use the glass dish. Okay, just remember to turn it. Like so. I like to turn it over too. Both sides. Trying to get it to about a 1/4 inch thickness all the way around. That's why I'm kind of going in a circle. Now, I'm going to work more on the center part because it's a little bit too thick compared to the edges. You want them to all be symmetric because they're going to cook the same time. They're going to be done the same time. Now, let's see what I got here. I have actually a 10.5 inch circle right there. I'm just trying to level it out a little better. Look at it, make sure it's about a 1/2 inch thick, which it is. So it actually measured out, according to my baking sheet, about 11 inches, between 10.5, 11 inches, which is really what you need. Even though your pie plate is 9 inches, you need enough to go up the side. All right, see how that's still rounded shape, and I'm going to look on the back, make sure there's no cracks. Alright, now I'm ready to lift it and put it into the pie dish. Mixing this flour over. Alright, so here's my pie dish. I'm going to lift it with my bench scraper. Just like so. Make sure it's moving around before I pick it up so it don't stick to the baking mat. And then I'm going to center it right here on the glass pie dish. If you ever get a chance to get one of these huge bench scrapers, they're really handy because then you can pick up the dough. If not, you can use your rolling pin and roll the dough on the rolling pin and then lift it up and put it over here as well. Now see how this one was a little bit different? There was more pie dough for the corners. and that way I can do a better job of crimping it. So I'm just kind of tucking in the corners at the bottom to make sure there's no space here. Alright, now I'm ready to crimp the edges. So basically all I'm doing is using both pointer fingers and my thumb and making an indentation in the crust. See that? That's lovely. Just like so. I'm holding my right pointer finger and my thumb against the glass dish as I'm pushing the dough out. Just like so. A little over there. Trying to keep part of the dough touching the edge of the pie plate so that when it cooks it doesn't just fall in. It helps it if you got it somewhat attached to the side of the pie plate. As I'm pushing it in with my left thumb, I'm actually pushing down with my right hand to get it to seat more in that corner, like that. So that way I have it connected to the pie plate. And then you can just fill in, if you have any little holes, you can fill that in. And if the dough gets too soft, it won't keep its shape. So you don't want to keep it out of the oven too long. You want it to keep its shape when you bake it. Okay? Alright, so now I'm going to put in the parchment paper and the beans. Parchment paper, and like I said, I made it a little bit bigger than the pie dish because I wanted it to kind of help hold up the edges. Alright, I'm going to put the beans in. And these are basically just working as a weight to the pie dough, so it keeps its shape. And then we're going to put it in the 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. And then we're going to take out the parchment paper and the beans. Okay, so while the pie dough is still cooking, we're going to actually toast our coconut. So I toast about 2 cups. You can use as much as you want, but I like to toast the coconut that's going to go on top of the pie, and we get ready to put the whipped cream on it. And I'm going to show you all how to make homemade whipped cream, which is basically heavy cream, vanilla, and a little bit of sugar. Alright, so now we're going to put this in the oven. It's at 400 degrees because that's what temperature our pie dough is cooking. We're just going to put it in there for about 3 minutes. We'll cook it for 3 minutes while we're putting together our coconut cream filling. Alright. So, For our coconut cream, we're actually going to cook it on the stove, and then once our pie dough cools, we will put the coconut pie, when it's cool, into the pie dough. Because if you don't, since there's butter in the pie dough, it may make the pie dough fall apart if you don't wait until both of those are cool. The pie filling as well as the pie dough. Okay, so the first thing you put in a coconut cream pie is 2 cups of sugar, which is what I have here. We're putting the dry ingredients first, and then I have 6 tablespoons of sifted flour. This is all-purpose flour. If you ever get a chance to buy Lily's flour online on Amazon, it's really a good flour to use, especially for baking. Then the next thing we're going to put in here is our coconut. And I actually have 2 cups of coconut that's going inside of the pie, as well as 2 cups that's going on top of the pie, because I'm making 2 pies. That's the coconut. And then I'm going to stir it around. Coconut, the sugar, and the flour. So that it's evenly distributed. Okay, and then the next thing you're going to put in is 6 egg yolks. And this is what I did to separate my egg whites and my egg yolk. So I basically cracked the egg and put this on top of the cup for the egg whites, and I have another cup for the egg yolks. And I basically just put the egg in here, and it separated the yellow yolk from the egg whites, so then I can use the egg whites to make scrambled eggs or something. But that's the easiest way to do it. Is you can get this on Shein for a couple bucks, and it's really handy, especially when you're trying to separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. And so I have 6 eggs in this cup, and I'm using a whisk just to beat them up a little bit to break them down. And on the eggs, you need to set them out and have them at room temperature, which I did earlier. I set them out of the fridge earlier so that they would be more at room temperature. They cook the best at room temperature for this type of pie. Okay, and then I have 4 cups of milk. We use Braum's milk just because it tastes better, and it also lasts a lot longer. Okay, so now we're ready to take our pie out. So we can remove the beans and the parchment paper. Crust, the sides of the crust is golden brown. And we're going to put our beans in this bowl so that we can use them again. Take this one out. You can also use rice or weights, but I found beans work better because the rice are so small that they're easy to keep intact. Okay, so I have the pie dough here. So what we're going to do is we're going to poke holes in the bottom of the pie crust so that it doesn't swell up, just like so. And we're going to put it back in there for about 10 minutes. Just like so. Now we're going to check our coconut. Alright, it's still good. What I like to do is let it cook a few minutes and then pull it out, stir it around, and put it back in there. So we're going to just let the pies cook another 10 minutes with the holes poked in the crust. And then we're going to pull out our coconut in about, let's say, 30 minutes. We're just basically trying to get our coconut lightly brown to go over on our pie once it's had time to cool and we put the coconut in the Cool Whip on top. Okay, while the pie dough is cooling, and I've got the coconut toasted, and I've got part of the filling mixed up, but before we cook the filling, I'm letting the pie dough cool, because you don't want to put the hot filling into a hot crust. So we're going to go ahead and mix up the homemade whipping cream. And so basically I just used heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and then I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of vanilla into the mixer. And that's how you make heavy cream. You can put as much sugar in it as you want. We're going to try it. And I changed out the mixing blade to a whisk because it mixes better with the cold cream. And we're trying to get to like a stiff peak, so when I do have the pie and the filling cool, and it may take a couple hours to do that because I'm going to put it in the fridge on the filling, then it'll be cool enough for me to put the whipped cream on and it doesn't separate. Alright, so we're going to try to do this on medium. It's going to take maybe 7 or 8 minutes, so we're going to time it. You want to make sure that your heavy cream is cold when you start to mix it, because that's going to make a difference whether it forms a stiff peak or not. Okay. And while that is mixing, we're going to go over to the stove and we're going to go ahead and finish cooking the coconut cream that's going to go in pie shells. Okay, so we're going to add We're going to add 4 cups of milk. So we already have in here coconut. We have the sugar in here. And we're going to add in milk, 4 cups. 4 cups of milk. And stir that around for a minute. And I've got it on medium heat, so when it starts cooking and bubbling in a minute, I'll lower it to the low heat. Now, okay, and now we're done with the Cool Whip. I wanted to show you what it looked like. A stiff peak is when you have the Cool Whip on here, on the whisk, and see how it's stiff and it won't fall off and it's not soft. That's how you want it. It's falling off, but it's maintaining its shape, and that's basically all you want, is for it to become a stiff peak, and that's what they call a stiff peak. Okay, and so we're going to try a little bit of it, make sure we have enough sugar in it. Yeah, that tastes just fine. And so we're going to put it in the fridge because we want it to be chilled before we actually put it on the pie. Alright. So I'm going to wrap it in saran wrap and I'm going to set it in the fridge. Alright, so now we're over here, we're going to finish cooking the filling. And once we get the filling cooked, we're going to make sure that the pie dough is cold. And I have the 6 egg yolks in the cup here, and we're going to make sure it's beaten up, beat it very well. And then we're going to also stick that in here. Okay, so now we're cooking our coconut cream pie filling. We have 2½ cups of sifted flour. We got a cup of coconut. I just put in the 6 egg yolks and the 4 cups of milk. And we're basically just stirring it with a whisk. And I've got it between medium and low, so medium-low heat. And our pie dough has cooled quite a bit, so we'll be able, once it gets done, we'll be able to put it in our pie dough. But you definitely want to make sure your pie dough cools so that it doesn't fall apart when you put your coconut cream pie in it. Okay. We also put 6 tablespoons of flour in it so that it could help thicken it up. And it doesn't take that long for it to get thickened. You want to get it to the thickness of banana pudding before you put it into the pie shell. And it doesn't take long when it's on medium-low heat to do that. Once we put the pie in the pie shell, we'll set it in the fridge after we put a layer of saran wrap on top of the coconut cream pie, because we don't want the skin to be on the surface of the pie. So that's why you put the saran wrap on top of the coconut cream on the pie. You can use a spoon or a whisk. I prefer a whisk because I think it mixes it better. And we did sift the 6 tablespoons of flour that we put in this. Once we get it done, we're going to add it to the pie shells. It doesn't take long. See, it's starting to get thicker. I'll show you with the spoon. See, it's still too thin right now. It's more like soup. But it's going to get thicker, like the consistency of like banana pudding. And it's also starting to bubble. So when it starts to bubble, I go ahead and put it on low, because it's not going to be too much longer and it's going to get really thick. See, you can already tell it's getting thicker. See how much thicker it is in just a minute? Also, if you're not sure if it's thick enough or not, if it sticks to the back of the spoon like it is now, oh, that's thick enough. See how it's starting to bubble? So you can turn it off. Turn it off, and then you can pour it into your pie shell. Just like so. Now, normally you can use a deep dish pie shell, but if you just use the regular pie shell, then you can actually make 3 pies with the coconut cream filling if you want, or you can eat the coconut cream separate. So, we're gonna let that cool. Alright, I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit to make sure that it's level. And then it's not to the top of the crust, but we're going to put Cool Whip on it after it cools down. And I'm calling it Cool Whip, but it's actually the heavy whipping cream that we made that was homemade. That's what we're going to put on top of it. I just call it Cool Whip, but it's not really Cool Whip. It's heavy whipping cream that we made for homemade. So we're going to smear it around like this. And then we're going to put saran wrap on it. And that's to make sure that no skin is going to sit on the surface of the pie. So that's why you put the saran wrap on it, even though it's not cool. Set it on top. And then kind of press it down on top of the pie filling, like so. And then do the same on the other one. Spread it out. Like so. We're going to let it cool for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to put it in the fridge so it can chill for maybe an hour or so, and then we'll put the heavy cream on it, heavy whipping cream that we made homemade. And the heavy whipping cream is just basically vanilla. I put 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of vanilla, and the heavy cream. I put 2 cups of heavy cream. So you can make it sweeter or have more vanilla if you like. It's totally up to you. Okay, so I'm going to let that set. Let that set. The pies have been in the refrigerator about an hour and a half to 2 hours to chill. And here's our cool heavy cream Cool Whip that we made homemade a while ago. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put half the Cool Whip on this pie, half on the other, and then I'm going to sprinkle it with the toasted coconuts that we made. I like this one better because the dough, I rolled it out farther, and so it was able to get to the top edge of the pie so to have a prettier crust. That one I should have wrote out farther. I think I wrote it out at 9.5 inches, and I wrote this one out at 10.5 inches. So it actually turned out better than that one. So basically you're just putting the homemade heavy cream on your pie. Spread it all out. And I used 2 cups of milk to make that heavy cream. I used the heavy whipping cream to make it. And all I added to it was vanilla and 2 tablespoons of sugar, and that's it. That's how easy it is to make. You just make like a little C pattern, just like so. Just make sure it's level. And make little swirls in it like you're doing the letter C. Just like that. Might put a little more right there. There, much better. Now I'm going to put the rest of it over here. And that was 2 cups of heavy cream that I used. So if you like it thinner, don't use 2 cups, but I used 2 cups on it. When I toasted the coconut earlier, I just toasted it for maybe 3 minutes. Just enough to get some of the pieces brown. Some of the filling spilled over a little bit. Yeah, I should have wrote this crust out to 10.5 inches, and that would have made it stand up taller around the edges, like that one. But next time we'll know to do that. See, since the pie is cool, it's not melting or cooling. I'm going to have to taste this one in just a second. And that's it. That's all there is to it, to making coconut pie. And I'm going to sprinkle the coconut on top. You can put as much as you want. I think I had to end up toasting like 2 cups. If you don't use all of it, put it in a bag and put it in the freezer. Use it for your next pie. How does that look? A little bit more right here. There you go. So you can still see the coconut, but you can tell that some of it's browner than the others. And that's how I like to toast it. You don't want to get it too dark, so I wouldn't recommend over 3 to 4 minutes. because it'll turn black on you. We'll use the rest of it up. You never have enough coconut. So I'd say 2 cups is about right because it covered every bit of it. Okay. Alright, now we're going to cut a piece. Pie plate, and we're going to be 7 tray. You can either use this one, it's got a edge to it to cut, or you can cut it with a knife. So let me get a knife. We're going to use a knife because I'm going to show you something. Okay. Cut a pie and you're trying to get even pieces, basically you cut it all the way down and then all the way across, and then you start dividing those pieces up. If you try to do one piece at a time, it's probably not going to come up even. Make sure you cut through the crust. I always wipe it off because otherwise it gets messy on the other pieces. So cut it again. Alright. And now we're going to cut it again in the middle of all the other pieces that we already cut. So that way they're all uniform, they're all the same size. Makes 8 pieces of coconut pie per pie, so we've made 16 pieces of pie today. Alright, now we can use our pie holder to scoop it out of the plate. Let's try this one because I wanted to try crust. Try this one. Good. Yep, there it is. Just like so. It's still intact. It still has the coconut on it. Alright. Now our test is to taste it. So let's taste it. That's one of the fun parts, is testing your pies. Okay? Looks good. I'm going to try it. Delicious. Delicious. I'm going to try the crust. And I make the crust with butter, but you can make it with shortening if you like. I don't like that taste, but yeah, it's really good. This is the winner. So every recipe that I teach you all how to do, it's going to be tested once or twice before I even do a video on it. So that you know when you get a recipe, you're not making a recipe and the item not turn out and you've wasted all that time and money trying to make it. So any recipes that I do, I would have tested them once or twice before I actually videotaped them. But I do appreciate you all watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next month when I cook the Hawaiian nut bread. Thank you for watching.